Most people think they're broke because they don't earn enough. They're wrong. The real reason most people can't build wealth has nothing to do with their income, their job, or their circumstances. It has everything to do with what's happening inside their brain. The same mental shortcuts that kept your ancestors alive for thousands of years are quietly destroying your financial future right now. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how your brain works against your wealth. And by the time we get to the third mechanism, you're going to start seeing your own financial decisions completely differently. There is a story we tell ourselves about money, that the people who have it worked harder, that the people who don't made mistakes lacked discipline. It is a clean story, a moral story, and it is almost entirely wrong. The truth that behavioral economists, neuroscientists, and psychologists have spent decades uncovering is far stranger than anyone in a position of financial authority wants you to know. Your brain was built for a world that no longer exists, and in the world that does exist, that ancient brain is not your ally. It is working against you every single day. To understand what is happening inside your mind when you make a financial decision, you have to go back. Not 10 years, not a generation, 200,000 years. For 99% of the time our species has existed on this planet, there were no banks, no savings accounts, no investments, no financial planning of any kind. There was only today, and the urgent question of whether you would survive it. The brain that evolved in that world was designed for short-term thinking, for immediate threats, for present rewards. Hoarding food made no sense when it would rot before morning. Planning for retirement made no sense when you might not see next winter. The entire reward architecture of the human brain was built around one organizing principle. Now is all that matters. But nobody told your brain. Nobody sent the update. For 200,000 years, the rules were simple. Eat now, rest now, spend now. Save nothing because tomorrow was never guaranteed. And then in less than 300 years, a fraction of a breath in evolutionary time, the entire game changed. The world crossed an invisible threshold, and suddenly the skills that kept you alive became the exact skills that would keep you poor. And so here you are, a 200,000-year-old mind, trying to navigate a financial system that was designed for a kind of thinking your brain was never built to do naturally. Psychologists call it present bias. And it is not a quirk or an anomaly. It is the default operating mode of the human mind. Think about the last time you bought something you couldn't quite afford. Not the large purchases, the small ones, the meal out when you'd planned to cook, the subscription you added without really thinking. In each of those moments, your brain was not malfunctioning. It was functioning exactly as designed, prioritizing the certain pleasure of now over the uncertain promise of later. Credit cards separate the pleasure of purchase from the pain of payment by exactly 30 days, just long enough for your brain to treat them as unrelated events. Buy now, pay later extends that window further. 6 months, 12 months. The further the payment, the smaller it feels. The smaller it feels, the more your ancient brain allows it. In 1979, two psychologists published a paper that would eventually earn one of them a Nobel Prize, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. What they discovered fundamentally changed how the world understood human decision-making. Losing something produces roughly twice the psychological pain as gaining the same amount produces pleasure. Losing $100 does not feel like the opposite of gaining $100. It feels like losing $200. They call this loss aversion. Kahneman and Tversky mapped this asymmetry precisely. The emotional response to gaining $100 rises modestly. The emotional response to losing $100 drops nearly twice as far in the opposite direction. The curve is not symmetrical. It never was, and that single asymmetry, invisible, unfelt, operating below conscious awareness, is quietly distorting every financial decision you make, and it is perhaps the single most consequential psychological force in the entire history of human financial behavior. An investor buys a stock at $100. It falls to 60. Every piece of rational analysis says, sell, but selling means making the loss real. And making the loss real triggers a pain response twice as powerful as any gain could counteract. So the investor holds and watches it fall to 40 and holds again. This is not irrational behavior. This is the brain doing exactly what evolution built it to do. Loss aversion is why people stay in jobs they despise, why small business owners pour money into failing ventures, why the default on almost every pension scheme is opt out rather than opt in. The system that was supposed to help you build wealth quietly weaponizes your oldest, deepest fear against you every single day without you ever noticing. There is a concept in behavioral economics so counterintuitive that when economists first proposed it, they were laughed out of academic conferences. It is called the sunk cost fallacy, and once you see it, you will find it everywhere. A sunk cost is any investment of money, time, or energy that has already been made and cannot be recovered. Basic economics says this is irrelevant to any future decision. The money is gone. The time has passed. What matters now is only what comes next. And yet, you buy a concert ticket and fall ill on the night. You go anyway. You order too much food and eat past the point of comfort because you paid for it. You stay in a relationship that has clearly run its course because of the years already spent. In finance, the consequences are devastating. Entrepreneurs funding failing businesses because of what they have already invested. Homeowners refusing to sell because the price fell below what they originally paid. Investors averaging down indefinitely, throwing good money after bad. The sunk cost fallacy is the financial system's most elegant trap because unlike present bias or loss aversion, which are imposed on you by circumstance, this trap is one you build yourself, brick by brick, decision by decision, with your own hands. In 1899, Thorstein Veblen described something he observed in the newly wealthy industrial society around him, a pattern of spending that had nothing to do with utility, comfort, or need. He called it conspicuous consumption, the deliberate public display of wealth, not to enjoy it, but to signal it. The drive to signal status is not a modern affectation, it is ancient. In the social groups our ancestors lived in, rarely more than 150 people, your relative status determined almost everything. Access to resources, access to mates, your likelihood of survival. A drop in social status registered in the same neural regions as physical pain. A rise in status produced the same reward signals as food or warmth. And now, in a world of social media, instant credit, and limitless consumer choice, that same system runs continuously. Not comparing yourself to 150 people in your village, but to thousands of curated, filtered, optimized representations of other people's lives. All day, every day. The car that is slightly too expensive for your income, the apartment in the neighborhood you cannot quite sustain, the wardrobe, the restaurant, the holiday that photographs well. None of these decisions are made in a financial vacuum. They are made in a social one, and your brain, ancient, tribal, status-obsessed, is the one making them. So what do? It would be easy and dishonest to end here with a list. 5 steps to overcome your biases, 3 habits of financially rational people, but that is not how any of this works. You cannot think your way out of systems that operate below the level of conscious thought. You cannot discipline your way past 200,000 years of neurological architecture, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. The moment you stop interpreting your financial failures as evidence of personal weakness and start recognizing them as the predictable output of a brain doing exactly what it was designed to do, something changes. Not everything, not immediately, but something. What the research actually shows is not that awareness eliminates these biases. It doesn't. What it shows is that a brain that understands its own architecture makes measurably different decisions than one that doesn't. Not perfect decisions, not rational decisions in the textbook sense, just different ones, slightly less driven by fear, slightly less captured by the immediate, slightly more able to hold the future in view alongside the present. The two systems, ancient and modern, emotional and rational, begin to work with each other instead of against each other. Not in harmony, that would be too clean, but in conversation. You cannot stop loss aversion from firing, but you can learn to recognize the feeling and know what it is. You cannot eliminate present bias, but you can build systems that work with your brain's architecture instead of against it. You cannot silence the status signals, but you can begin to notice when a financial decision is actually a social one wearing a financial disguise. Your brain was not built for this world, but you are not only your brain. And that, quietly, stubbornly, against considerable odds, might be enough.